Hello, my name is Jake Smith and I'm one of the co-pastors at Bluffs Community Church. You may know that our home is just down the road at the pump house, but because of the guidelines from the county related to COVID, we aren't able to meet there. So we've been adapting, trying to find different ways to do church. We did church on location, we did drive-in services, we did some online services. But today we're here to announce that we're going to start meeting in person at a new location here at the Sanctuary on King. It's an event and office space. It's a multi-use space. It's the former home of Wesley United Church, but now some people own it and they rent it out for people to use for a variety of things, and we're gonna have our services there starting next Sunday morning at the same time, 9:30. We actually filmed our Good Friday service here and we love the space. We thought, hey, someday it'd be great to do Sunday morning services there. So we're glad to be doing that now. I do wanna make sure you know we look forward to being back at the pump house, but for now, we're gonna meet here. Come on in.
Hi, welcome. We are so excited to show you this space. Right in here is this beautiful foyer area where we'll have a time of greeting. As well, there's going to be a hospitality table right here. And that hospitality table will have hand sanitizer, masks if you need one, and anything you might need for service. Come on in. I'm going to show you the sanctuary. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's this large room with plenty of seats so that we can sit socially distanced the way that they're encouraging us to be safe. There's lots of space in here. We have beautiful stained glass windows, floors, and the acoustics in here are amazing. Jake, did you have more to say for our friends?
So as I said, this is a very different kind of space, and we've been adapting to different kinds of spaces all along. We were at the pump house, then all around La Crosse, in a driveway, on our porch, in our living room, and now we're going to be at an even different space. This beautiful old church with wooden pews, which I love, wooden floor, great stained glass, as Michelle said, a pipe organ that we hope we can get John Lynn to sometime play for us. But we're glad to share this with you. We're excited about it, and we look forward to seeing you this next week at 9:30 a.m.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us here for this video. We know this is a different kind of Sunday for us. The way we're doing service is different. Mostly we want to introduce you to this great facility. And as we said, we've been adapting all along, and that this is our plan B is pretty great. So we're really grateful that we can be here. Today, we're beginning the second half of Ephesians. We're beginning the what portion. I've said kind of all along that Ephesians is kind of a two-part book. It's really kind of a manual to the church. It's written to a region, most likely written to a region, not specifically to Ephesus. And it's written to a variety of churches that are doing pretty well. In fact, Paul is just saying, hey, you're doing great. Here's how to go to the next step. We kind of know that it isn't addressed to a specific church because the only other person he names besides himself is Tychicus, who's delivering the letter. Most letters include, he names people, Paul will name people, and they'll address specific issues. In fact, quite often to get a letter from Paul was kind of scary because he was addressing some specific things. Sometimes he was responding to a letter that he'd received, and there's hints within that letter where he's answering questions that they have, or he's addressing specific behavioral issues or problems within the church. Ephesians is a little bit more generic. It's saying, hey, you churches out there, here are some ideas, here's some things that you can do to go further in your walk individually and corporately. So we're talking about that. The first half, the first 3 chapters are really doctrinal statements. They're what statements or why statements. Here are some foundational ideas, some beliefs, some doctrines, some themes, and then now we're going to take those things and apply them. So how do we respond to those ideas? That's what we're talking about in the second half of Ephesians. Before I get into that, I want to just kind of remind us of some of the themes or truths that we've discussed so far. In the beginning, Jesus calls us and gives us a new identity. We talked about that. And then he gives us perspective to be thankful. Remember, Paul is writing from prison. He's in Rome. And he wrote a few letters at this time. Colossians, Philemon, and Ephesians are all written around the same time. There's some overlapping themes. He's in Rome because he's in prison. And he's about to meet with Caesar. And he thinks he might die. And he's writing kind of these last letters, trying to get them out to make sure that those churches and we hear these truths. And yet, despite being in prison, he's so thankful. He kind of goes off about how thankful he is. He gives us perspective to be thankful no matter what the circumstances. We talked about Jesus having the power to change hearts and lives. We often wonder, do people really change? Can they really change? This letter, the gospel tells us yes. Jesus can change people. Jesus can change lives. And then there are good works. Jesus came to show us a different way of living. He says, follow my example. I'm going to give you my Spirit so you can do even greater things than I did. And then he invites us into those good works. That was his plan all along. Show us how to live, and then send us out in the world to tell more people about that. That is the good work. Those are the good works that Jesus has prepared for us. We talked about reconciliation and how we're reconciled to Jesus, but then that's this religious or spiritual experience, but then the ethical or behavioral response is to pursue reconciliation to our fellow humans. That is, these two go hand in hand. I'm reconciled to Christ, but then I need to pursue reconciliation with the people around me. We talked about the unfathomable love of God and that Jesus sends us the Spirit that we can begin to understand something that is not understandable. And again, that our name is given to us by God. We are named by God, the creator of all things. That is an identity that is eternal and true in ways that other things are not. Today, we switch gears. Today, we talk about how we respond to that. These are good gifts. These are gifts that deserve a response, right? These are gifts that we respond to, and we are changed because of them. We're going to talk about what that looks like. Before we get into that, let me pray. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for your word. Thank you for this letter that encourages us, that challenges us, and helps us to be a little bit more like you and to represent you better in the world. I pray that you would guide us, speak through me, and speak through your word today. In your holy name, amen. So the theme today is unity, and unity as a mark of maturity. We're going to go through most of Ephesians 4, 1 through 16. So if you want to turn to that, I'll be reading a couple verses at a time and kind of unpacking those things. But he's talking about unity. Now, unity is hard if you think about it. We quite often have this idea of we need to be united, we need to compromise, we need to work together. Typically what we mean is you need to come to my side of the aisle, right? You need to agree with me. If you can just correct your stupid thinking and think more like me, we'd be united in something. But that's not what Paul is saying. Paul is saying we need to work together. We need to come together. Now, there's a dark side of compromise where we kind of give up some values, right? We give up things that are not that are true just to get along. There's a good side of compromise where we come together, we decide what's most important, and we work to maintain unity. Paul says unity is a mark of maturity. So we need to think about that. Are there areas of disunity in our lives? Or we have relationships or within our own body, within Bluffs Community Church, that there's a lack of unity that may mean that we need to grow up a little bit. So let me get into it. Ephesians 4, 1 through 16. I, therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love. Let me just stop there. Again, Paul reminds us he's in prison. He's saying, I'm in prison, and I'm encouraging you in these ways. He said, I urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you've been called. What does that mean? Jesus prepares good works for us and asks us to do those things in his name. We talked about this a few weeks ago. If your boss asks you to do something in their name, go do this, represent me on this committee or this project, take lead over this thing. What your boss is saying is, do this in a way that makes me look good. Do this the way I would do it. Make me look good as you do this in my name or for me, as you represent me. He's saying, I urge you to walk in a manner worthy of that calling. Those good works that God is calling to you, take that seriously. Those are sacred things. How do we do that here? He says, with humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love. Quite often we respond to these kinds of calls and we get stern, we get strict. Here he's saying, no, be humble, be gentle, be patient, bear with one another in love. Now this line, bear with one another in love, this is kind of a loaded line. He's saying something like, Look, sometimes you're going to have to bear with other people. You're going to have to deal with that. You're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to struggle with those relationships. That's going to be hard. But also, sometimes they're going to have to bear with you. Sometimes you're the jerk. I think if you get to know Paul, I think if he were honest, he'd say, yep, sometimes I'm the jerk too. People have to bear with me. We need to bear with one another in love. So part of how we walk in a manner worthy of that calling is by being humble, by being gentle, patient, and bearing with one another in love. That is how Christ relates to us. He's asking us to relate to one another in that way. Moving on, in verse 3, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to the one hope that belongs to your call, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. I think what I see in this is our own responsibility. We quite often respond to Christ's love and sovereignty, his power, and say, it's up to you, Lord. You do in me what you will, and you do through me what you will. And then we become passive. Here Paul is saying, no, you have some responsibility here. You need to be eager to maintain that unity. You need to do some things, sacrifice things, put some work in to maintain that unity in what? The bond of peace. So much of what we do when we disagree is angry. It's accusing. We shout across aisles or we type through the internet angry thoughts that don't lead to peace and don't create unity. They create more division. He's saying this unity, this body, is under one God, one faith, one baptism, one Lord, one God and Father of all, who is over all and in all. Now, we often think of our faith as an individual experience. This is my faith, my spiritual experience, my spiritual life. Here Paul is kind of saying, yes and no. You have some responsibility for your faith, but also for our faith. This is a shared experience under one God, one Lord, one Father, one faith, one Spirit. And we need to be eager, not begrudging, but eager to maintain that spirit of unity. Remember, this is a letter about how the church can be the church even better. These are churches that are doing well. And Paul, even though it isn't written specifically to Ephesus, he did live in Ephesus for over 2 years. He knew these people, and he planted other churches in the region. He was familiar with them. He's saying, you're doing great. Here's what you need to know. It's going to get hard, and you need to be eager to maintain that unity in the Spirit. This is up to you. You have some responsibility here. And then he goes on in 7, but grace was given to each one of us according to the measure of Christ's gift. Grace given. We have each received forgiveness. If you think back about Christ's gift, what does that mean? Christ's birth and life and death and resurrection, right? His cleansing blood, his redemption, our redemption in him, Christ's gift. This is what unites us. It's the most important thing about us, each one of us and all of us. This is that thing that brings us together. This is the most important thing. When I see another brother or sister in Christ, someone else who has chosen to follow Christ, I know that the most important thing is also the most important thing about them is the most important thing about me. It's Christ's gift, this gift of grace that we've received. We need to remember that. We need to approach each other with that understanding, with that priority, with that value, that truth in mind. We are united under that, and that needs to be sacred. And so we eagerly maintain that unity. I want to jump ahead to verse 15. Rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ, for whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love. When we see each other as parts of a whole, we treat each other differently, more lovingly and gracefully. We speak truth, but in love, and because of love, because we depend on each other. A body does its best work when all parts are cared for. Some of what I'm saying might sound like just being passive, just letting everything go. Here Paul is saying, no, we do confront things. We do challenge one another. We do speak the truth, but we do it in love. Love, this uniting love of Christ's gift, is how we approach things when we disagree, when there's trouble, when there are problems, when there are disagreements. He isn't saying everything goes as long as you love one another. He's saying, speak the truth in love. Now, some of you know, and I've talked about it before, I've done some hiking in my day and done some long trips and covered some long miles. A few years ago, we were hiking a trail up in northern Minnesota, and we were going to try to do 95 miles over a long weekend. And I had hiked that far before, and so we knew we could do it. One of the guys in our team was, well, he's about my age now, but he was older then, so he got himself in great shape. But his backpack didn't fit great. And so he got going, and he started limping. And as he started limping, because of his ankle, that affected his knee and his hip and his back. And to be honest, it said it took about 6 months for him to stop limping because he was in pretty bad shape. By not taking care of the ankle, by not adjusting the backpack appropriately, and by not taking care of the ankle, he ended up creating problems throughout the whole body. We need to look after one another. Paul says that we are a body. Some are feet, some are hands, some are eyes, some are ears. We all play important roles. We need to look after one another, take care of one another, not dismiss one another, not say, well, I disagree with you and so you're not important to me, but I disagree with you and you're very important to me because our faith is one faith. Our love is one love. We're under one God. This requires sacrifice. These words, be humble, be gentle, bear one another, that creates some work, that creates some effort, comes from a desire to please God, to follow God, and to maintain that unity, to honor the gift that He has given me and to give us, and that He's given us. I do this work, I enter into this work, and I make these efforts to bear with one another and to recognize that others are bearing with me as well. In the previous chapters, we learned many important things about ourselves. Here, Paul says that they are the things that are most important about us and should, and therefore unite us. Remember, it's not you or me, it's us. Ephesians is written to us corporately, us as a group. These are the most important things, and they should unite us. He then says that unity is a hallmark, a characteristic of being grown up. The Israelites often forgot their covenant with the Lord, which led to sin and destruction and disunity. They fought with one another. The law led to comparisons and competition. They sniped at each other and they judged each other. Galatians says they devoured each other. Paul wants us to remember that the most important thing about us individually is also the most important thing about us corporately. Our faith in Jesus, love, and forgiveness. This should be the most important thing, the unifying thing. Consider a team that does something amazing. Maybe the underdogs win a championship. How do they do that? They devise and stick to a plan, and they're united around one common goal. We are a team dedicated to win. Sometimes the underdog, the less skilled team, wins. Why? Because they have come up with a plan and they've committed to it, and that's the most important thing. They're united around that goal. But sometimes we let other, less important, or less eternal things divide us, and we forget the most important. Meme culture allows us to take pot shots at each other from the safety of our keyboards. Debates about secondary and tertiary issues become volatile and divisive opportunities to tear each other down. We sit at our desks and we type comments, and I'll tell you, I do this. It's more often than I care to admit when I have to. Sometimes I even start typing and have to delete it because it feels so good to send posts. Friends of mine will post things that I just disagree with, I think are wrong. And I want to lash out in anger, in self-righteous judgment and correction. And I think I'm right, but it's not in love. It's not in a spirit to maintain unity. It's not in gentleness. It's not in humility. And so on my best days, I refrain from doing that. We also let some of these disagreements just cause wedges to come between us, and we just stop talking to those people. Here, Paul is saying we can't do that. We are united under Christ, because of Christ's gift to us, because of his forgiveness of us, because of this great gift, we are called not just to let him do that work, but to enter into that work of being united together. This is a hallmark of a mature Christian. Now, I want to be honest. I'm not covering this passage because I'm concerned about disunity in Bluffs Community Church. We haven't seen many of you, so we don't even know. This is where we're at in Ephesians. I will say that I know that it's very easy to let wedges come between people and drive people apart, and those become irreparable. And so what I'm saying is that as we come back together next week and we begin to see each other more often, as you interact with Christians, believers from other churches, as you hear about things or see things posted online, can our response be governed and dictated, guided by the primary values of first, loving, graceful, eager to maintain that calling of unity, eager to represent Christ well, to be humble, to bear with one another, and then, if something needs to be confronted, can we speak that truth in love first? Again, I'm not calling anyone out. This is where we're at in Ephesians. As I read these passages and I pause, I think, Jake, you could use some work in your heart. Right? You could be more humble. You could be more gentle. I might not lash out online, but my heart, which Jesus is just as concerned about or more concerned about, sometimes doesn't represent him as well as it could. And so I find these passages to be very challenging. Again, not so much just for my behavior, but what's in here. Because what's in here can then, even if I don't lash out verbally, keeps me from interacting with my brothers and sisters, because I've separated myself from that conversation. Jesus says, look, this is the call. I've saved you. I brought you together. You need to represent me. And we can't do that fully unless unity in love is a primary value and a primary goal, and we don't do that work. So I encourage you as you go into this next week, think about how you can contribute to the unity within the body, how you can maybe confront more lovingly that mix of truth and love together. Can we do that better? Can we reflect Christ better? Can we bear with one another better? And for those of us who are feeling tired and we say, I can't do all that, Jesus doesn't just say, hey, do this. He says, I'm here to help. I've sent my Spirit to equip you. So we can ask the Lord for help. If there's someone that we need to confront, if there's truth that needs to be told, we can ask, Lord, help me to do this in love. I want to confront this situation, but I want to do it in a way that pleases you, that honors you, honors the gift that you've given, and contributes to unity within the body. Help me to do that. We need our help. Let me just pray, and we can be done. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for your word. Thank you for this high calling you've given us, and this challenge to be humble, gentle, loving truth tellers. Help us to do that well. Help us to represent you. You love us. You confront us gently. Help us to share that with one another, to follow that example. We give you ourselves. Continue to help us to represent you well in this community, in this world. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Thank you so much for joining us. We love you. We'll see you next week.